All right, we're live. How's it going, Justin? You're here
Hey,
on
good.
the Equal Parent Project. We're going to be sharing information regarding, your case. The main goal of this is equal parenting, right? So shared parenting. You're a huge advocate on TikTok. You've got a large following. Um, let's go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Justin. The TikTok page is Georgia Shared Parenting. I'm on TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram, but I'm much more active, and I've got a bigger following on TikTok. And I've got a website that I put up just to kind of collect some information from other parents that are going through this same kind of stuff. It's georgiaparents.org. Also, every now and then I'll plug that into a TikTok video or whatever.
Okay, okay. And what's on the website? What specifically do
Uh,
you cover on there?
Yeah, so it's a little bit about the issues. It's which my big thing is shared parenting. I know we're going to talk about that, but it also has a couple blurbs about things like judicial accountability. I think there's something about the move for the push for more cameras in courtrooms in there. A couple other big issues that I really don't think should be controversial. The things that I think would help everybody, and then there's also some links to other resources on there, not necessarily people that I am endorsed by or endorse. Like I don't really operate like that, at least right now, but it's links to just folks that are also fighting this fight, have some good information, like Robert Garza, Mark Ludwig, National Family Justice, National Parents Organization, folks like that.
Okay, okay. I like that you bring up Mark Ludwig. He's been doing a lot, especially as far as like just focusing on the legislative side of this. He's been having meetings in DC. He's been having meetings in various states with different legislators. Huge impact on the community, and hopefully will find resolve in the near
Yeah,
future.
yeah, for sure.
So, on your note, right? What was the turning point for you where you began to start deep diving and researching the shared parenting side of things? Because you put out a lot of content that specifically covers, research into best interest of the child having both parents in their lives. So what turned that point
Yeah,
for you?
yeah. Um, yeah, so for I think like a lot of folks probably in this movement, it was around a court case, a personal court case of mine, and I can talk a few details and specifics of that, but it was the idea. I mean, I've been in and out of courts for 6 years now. My daughter is 6 years old, and that's how long I've been dealing with this, and still in an active open custody case also. But the most recent the most recent filing basically was I got served with asking for more asking for more child support money and a few other things, in the face of me having consistently over the last 6 years been asking for more time. I've got the standard Friday night special, as the old New York lawyers used to call it, right? I've got every other weekend from Friday night at 6 p.m. to Sunday night at 6 p.m. And then on a good week, I'll get like a 3 hour weekday dinner, a weekday visit, right? So I've got the good old Friday night special, but that's like, I know I need to be involved. I want to be more involved, and like I said, I got I got hit with some of those papers from this most recent custody case, and I'm like, there's been 6 years of asking for more time with my daughter. Now mom is coming back and asking for more child support money. Like, there's got to be something that we can do about that. Like, this just doesn't seem right, right? Like, this can't be the end result of what is best, because that phrase, best interest of the child, is get used all throughout the law, all throughout these court documents. I'm like, this can't actually be what's in the best interest of the child, right? And then I start doing some research, I start reading, looking at actual studies, and sure enough, it's not. But just a lot of laws around the country haven't caught up to what's actually in the best interest of the child.
Absolutely. And your fight's in Georgia. So I got a friend. I'm stationed in South Georgia. I live in Florida though. I've got a
Okay.
friend in South Georgia that wasn't married, had a child. And when he was talking to me about his case, he said that Georgia, if you're children out of wedlock, good luck. He said the judges don't care. The Georgia laws don't protect you at all. So your
So
shared
so
parenting's out the window.
Absolutely. No, so funny enough about that. I know this, this probably I don't know if this was on your agenda for us to talk about, but the Georgia legislature right now is they have a study committee. Oh, what is it? It's a House study committee on legitimation. They've had like three or four public
Okay.
meetings, and they are it's a little bit of a funny backstory. I'll try to make it short, but I think it started with them trying to analyze the court fees that are involved in the legitimation process, right? Like there's a $200 filing fee. There's a couple other legal documents that you have to pay money for, right? And so the question
Okay.
was being asked, like, is like these court fees, this $200 filing fee, this kind of stuff, is this the barrier in Georgia to fathers being involved? And the kids like let's study
Mhm.
this, let's figure out what's going on. Maybe like, do we waive this $200? Do we change the process a little bit? What's going on? And so I think over the course of, they've been doing this study committee for about 6 months now. Over the course of these 6 months, like I
Mhm.
said, they've had a few public meetings, and then they're going to have their own private like research meetings and whatever. They, I think these legislators who probably a lot of them were very unfamiliar with what this process actually looks like. They realized that in Georgia, you can, as a father, you can be on the birth certificate, you can establish paternity through DNA, you can
Mhm.
be in the hospital when the baby is born, you can actually be living with the mother from before birth to after birth. I mean, you can do all of those things, but if you haven't gone through this legal process of legitimation, like establishing your
Mhm.
right to the child, then yeah, it's exactly like you said, right? Like you have no rights to that child. And then what's more, this is where the shared parenting part comes in. Let's say that you do all of that. And some of these public comments that they've
Mhm.
been getting from folks, there was a one of the guys who spoke at the last one is actually a PGA Tour professional, and he said he's been going through this for, I think, 2 or 3 years, spent thousands of dollars. Let's say even after that 3 year long process, you finalize the legitimation. Well, now you're stuck with a custody court schedule, which in Georgia is going to get you every other weekend, right? So even after that
Yeah.
3 year fight for legitimation and thousands of dollars, at the end of that, these children still don't have any meaningful access with their fathers. So yeah, no, like I mean, like I said, I know that that may not have been on your agenda today, but the Georgia legislature actually is finally looking into that. I don't know what the outcome of that is going to be, how promising it is, but it is. I mean, they have been having meetings, and there is a little bit of movement on that right now. Funny enough.
Did you see so the change in Kentucky is that 50-50 is the presumed now, just like Florida went to as well. But
Hmm.
from what I've been seeing online, Kentucky's been getting a lot of traction that their divorce rates have gone down since doing so. With that, that falls back in line with the shared parenting aspect of things, right? If there's no incentive, is what it seems like, you're less likely to enter into these sort of actions. But with Georgia specifically, they can do these committees all day long, but it's still a delay to the child. It's still a delay to what's in the best interest of the child. The
Yeah.
legitimacy thing, I know for Florida, what they do is it's once you sign that birth certificate, like that's it. You've been, but Florida has a weird law which people don't talk about. If the child's under 4, at any point in time, the mother can remove the father from the birth certificate. All she has to do is send a letter to the vital
Uh,
statistics office.
Interesting.
So,
I didn't.
like,
Yeah. I
counterproductive,
didn't.
right?
I hadn't read
Yeah,
that. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. That's weird. Wild.
yeah. I, I had a weird situation as an adult. I found my father at like 26, and I sent
Okay.
over my vital statistics to update him on my birth certificate, and that's how I found out about it. So it was a
Oh,
weird law that
interesting.
people
Okay.
don't talk about.
Yeah, yeah.
But
No, that's
with
funny. Well,
that,
and it yeah, and it makes you wonder how many other legitimation laws around the country are
mhm,
very not intuitive, because I was, and a lot of these things are things that most people don't even think about. To be honest, the legitimation stuff is stuff that I haven't really thought about until recently, because I was married at the
mhm,
time of my child being born. But then even with custody and
yeah.
shared parenting, a lot of people that are married and have access to their own children, they don't even think about that until until they're involved with it. So it's I've heard this realm of family law. Somebody called it, I think, the silent epidemic of children around the
Mhm.
country, right? And I think it's exactly that, right? It's a lot of this kind of stuff that most people don't have any experience with.
So for me, when I look at the entire process, I think a lot of it is just the winning factor, right? Because
Yeah.
the states are making a mistake with legislative issues, right? Because they're not trying to look at the best interest of the child. They're looking at, for a lot of people's speculation, it's Title 4D. It's they're incentivized by Title 4D, and that's why they do this. But I think, like, for just the judicial side of things, it's a matter of somebody gets jaded, right? For, whatever happened in this post separation issue, and then it's that fight, right?
Yep.
And then that's all it is a win. It's who's going to win this. It's never, the child gets put on the back burner, and then that's where we're at. I went through the divorce process, and my stuff got split between two different states. So I was fighting divorce in Florida. I was fighting child in Virginia, the custody in Virginia,
Okay.
and it's like, it's kind of like a race to see who can win, who can get the
Yep.
things on paper first. And I
Yep.
tell,
Yep.
I try to tell parents all the time, whenever you guys are going to separate or anything else like that, you need to be communicating. And then on top of communicating, what you really need to do is you really need to start thinking about, like, every action I take will affect this child. When you walk into
Yep.
court, did one of you move out of the house? If you did move out of the house, right, it shows that you abandoned that child, and now you're going to have that uphill battle when you get into court. You know, Communicating with each other is what starts. Hey, how are we going to amicably do this? You know.
Right. And there are, so I've heard lots of stories about this, and I think this is probably true to a large extent for my own case as well. A lot of stories where couples will say, or at least one party of the couple will say, that they really were not like high conflict. I'm going to use that phrase in air
Mhm.
quotes because we can talk about what that actually
Yeah.
means later. But they really were not high conflict until the first time they walked into a lawyer's office, or maybe when they walked
Hmm.
into that courtroom, right? Like, yeah, I mean,
Yep.
something like, obviously you're getting divorced. You don't have to tell me that you think he's a scumbag. Like, I know that because you're getting divorced, right? Like, whatever happened, if there was infidelity, if she just got bored, if he wanted something, like, whatever. Like, obviously there's something there that's causing a divorce. So I get that there's some level of animosity, or you're not on great terms. But
Hmm.
again, this high conflict idea, you walk into a lawyer's office or a courtroom and you start reading these statutes, and a lawyer explains to you how this is going to go, and he's like, well, we'll just take Georgia because that's where I am. He's like, well, in Georgia, you're both going to come into the courtroom, you're going to make your case, talk to the judge, and then the judge is probably going to order one of you to be a primary parent, which means you're
Hmm.
going to get 80% of the time with the child. You're going to get all decision making authority with the child. You're going to get a fat child support check for the next 18 years, or however long the child is alive,
Yeah.
right? And you're basically going to have full control over the terms of how that other parent accesses the child, what
Hmm.
extracurriculars the child does, where the child goes to school, medical decisions, all that, the whole thing, right? And so
Hmm.
you hear that, and you're like, well, wait a second. You just told me, or the judge just told me, that, like, we don't pick winners and losers here. This is about the best interest of the child. But then when you laid out the process to me, it sounds like you're picking a winner. And then the
Yeah.
next logical step of that is like, well, I want to be the winner, right? So how do I get to be the winner? And it turns into mudslinging. I prove that I'm a
Hmm.
better parent than you. You didn't
Yep.
pick up the kids. You didn't go to the doctor's appointments. You didn't, and I did this. And then now we just escalated, and nobody cares what the best interest of the child is anymore. You're just trying to prove that you're the better parent, right?
Yeah. The winner. That's it.
Right, exactly. You're
And
you're trying to prove you're the winner. Yeah.
yeah, and it doesn't change. The weird part, so I'm on the law side of things. You did everything I've seen that you've put out has been a lot of, like, the studies that are needed to be brought in court, that realistically should be brought into court every single time. Like, hey, let's put
Mhm.
all the mudslinging aside and let's look at the facts, right? These
Yeah.
studies have
Yeah.
happened for years. On the law side of things, when I look at people going into court, the first thing I think of is the Supreme Court ruled on Troxel v. Granville that parents have a fundamental right.
Hmm.
And when you take that for what it is, what's a fundamental right? That means that I am above everybody else when it comes to this, both of us, right?
Right.
So when the court started posing the unrealistic rulings and the ideas of a winner and a loser, it's like, well, where did my fundamental right go? And now
Right.
we're diving into realms of things that don't make sense. We're diving into 14th Amendment violations of due process, because in my due process, I have a fundamental right, and you're saying that there's a winner and a loser. You know
We've set
that
up a guilty until proven innocent mentality
right.
here.
And then the
Yeah,
burden of
yeah,
proof. What
yeah.
you know? What is the burden of proof in custody? It's the preponderance of evidence. It's not beyond a reasonable doubt, like criminal cases.
Right.
Have you heard of the silver bullet?
Oh yeah, yeah. Now, fortunately, that was actually not a major component of my case, but I've got
Yeah.
several friends, heard lots of
Hmm.
stories about yeah, which is and again to your point, if we're talking burden of proof and it's just a preponderance of evidence, if you're talking
Yep.
51%, somebody looking at a piece of paper and saying that looks legit, it's convincing,
Yep.
custody goes here or
Yeah.
whatever.
But
Uh,
if it,
yeah,
it's got a what is it? A TPO attached to it, temporary protection
yeah,
order.
yep,
Doesn't that fall under criminal?
yeah.
So it should be beyond a reasonable doubt. So
Right,
like you
right.
look at the law side of things, and like these arguments that we're seeing in court doesn't make sense at all
Well,
for
and it's
anybody.
yeah, and it's such a weird blurring of lines in family court specifically,
Hmm.
especially when you do get things like that, like the silver bullet, these allegations being made against one parent, or yeah, TPOs, domestic violence, or whatever it is. It's to me, it's such a weird blurring of the lines, because in most civil cases, like the end result is there's going to be a payout,
Hmm.
you owe him $1 million, and then we'll cut ties, everybody's going to move on or whatever. And then
Yeah.
obviously in criminal court, there's been some sort of criminal violation, somebody got hurt or killed or robbed or whatever the worst
Yeah.
case is. But a lot of times in these family courts, you'll have exactly this, right, where there's like a criminal component that bleeds over into this civil side, and you almost have to pause for a second, and you're like, are we addressing criminal matters here, or are we addressing civil matters? And I've been talking to several parents in Georgia about this recently too, where like there's so Georgia has a criminal statute about withholding custody. It's I think it's
Yeah.
16545
Hmm.
is the OCGA code, but it's with withholding lawful custody, right? And so it is a criminal statute in Georgia. It's punishable by a $500 fine. Second offense is 500. Third offense is jail time, right? And so
Most
actually,
states it's custodial interference.
yeah,
That's what it's called.
sorry, custodial interference, exactly. So, and actually, I think Georgia actually does right now have escalating fines. I was thinking of the Texas law that I think has 500 jail time. Georgia has like 400, 1,000, and then jail time. But either way, the point is it's
Hmm.
a criminal statute. But then we have to ask, how many law enforcement agencies in Georgia enforce this? How many prosecutors are willing to take this to court? Because if it's a criminal statute,
Big question.
it's gonna involve law enforcement, and it's gonna involve prosecutors, and it's gonna involve an actual criminal conviction. But what happens is, if you bring that up, whatever the most of the time, whatever the local sheriff's office is or the police department, they're gonna just kind of wipe their hands and be like, oh no, that's a civil matter, take that back to your civil judge.
Hmm.
Right. And it's like, well, what's like, again, blurring these lines. I thought, like, we've got these criminal statutes on the books for interference of custody, but now you're telling me to take it back over to the civil side. So yeah, just a lot
I'm
of,
re-
I mean, that happens across the board in a lot of this stuff.
I'm reading the law right now, and Georgia's is very in depth. It says if
It
they
is.
are taking or enticing the child, so if they're committing the child to do the act,
Yep.
and committing to it, harboring the child if you turn around and you hide the child,
Yep.
retaining possession, obviously, which is the standard custodial interference. And it gets more serious. So it's a federal law if you go over state lines anyway, but
Yeah.
Georgia explicitly enacts it in their law, which is a good thing. So
Yeah.
that's crazy. Georgia has a very in-depth law for it.
So, well,
Third
and that
offense is a felony too.
exactly. And that was the wildest thing when I first read, is it 16545?
It is 16,545. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so that was one of the wildest things to me when I first read that was I was blown away by how, to be honest, like how, yeah, exactly, how good, how in depth, like how, I'm trying to
Mhm.
think of a good of a good descriptor for it. Like Georgia has a very intensive custodial interference law. Like
Mhm.
honestly, the way that the law is written is just, if you take it on face value, one of the best in the country for protecting the child's right to be able to see both parents. But
Absolutely.
again, you have to ask that question, and several of the parents that I've been working with around the state have actually been doing this recently. They've been talking to a couple police departments and sheriff's office and taking this code section, taking this statute to them, asking, do you guys enforce this? If so, what does it look like, and what's the end result of this? And almost every time they take it in and actually talk to somebody in law enforcement, they're like, oh, no, yeah, no, we wouldn't do that unless it was
Go to
like
a judge.
kidnapping or
Yep.
across state lines or whatever. Yeah, that's going to have to go to a judge, and then you're going to have to get a ruling and go from there. It's like, well, what's the point of even having this law if
Yeah,
nobody's
it's
doing
not
anything about
enforced.
it, right? Yeah, yeah,
And then you get in front of a judge, and what's the judge going to do? Slap on the wrist? Hey, don't do that
maybe.
again. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I
You're probably not going to get that. Even like getting the time back, you're probably not going to get that time back. The schedule is probably not going to change going forward. Yeah, your judge is going to
mhm.
say, hey, don't do that anymore. But there's not. I mean, there's not going to be any fine or penalty or anything, right?
Yeah, so I had a similar situation in my case back in 2021. I came back overseas. They were keeping the child from me. I haven't seen her in geez, I don't even know. It had been like a year and a half.
Oh wow.
And
Okay.
they were playing monkey in the middle. They sent my daughter to South Carolina, 2 states away, with the grandparents. So
Hmm.
I called, tried to come visit. They refused. I said, all right, that's fine. I'm going to enact my parental rights. I called the police station there. Ended up showing up with a police escort to the house. They tried to run. They took the kid, put her in a car, tried to run, which they were going to run back to Virginia, which is a federal offense. The FBI gets involved,
Yeah.
and
Right.
thankfully the police stopped them, blocked them in, and whatnot. I retrieved my daughter, but the entire court process, right, moving past that, and that's why I talked about Troxel v. Granville, which is a huge case for anybody that needs to know. Um, uh, my entire court process preceding that incident was used against me over and over and over again, which is a violation of Troxel v. Granville. Uh, but I was represented by an attorney at the time. I represent myself now. And you learn so much more about where like your protections are going to come in. As cruddy as it sounds, when you turn around and you start doing the research yourself and looking into things yourself, like your attorney is there, but your attorney has to play the this is my job at the end of the day, so I can only fight so much.
Right.
And
Right.
that's why I'm bringing up this incident. But you know that in itself is custodial interference. And that just shows how these states like to handle it. I was shocked that South Carolina got involved, and they were hesitant to.
So can I ask, was it used against you in the sense of like you were, I don't know, how do you phrase that? You were causing a scene, or you were putting
Yep,
distress in your on your
yep,
child or whatever. Like, yeah.
exactly that.
Well, and what's wild, what's so wild about that? I mean, obviously you know this because it sounds like you've lived it. But I've heard a lot of similar stories from parents where it's like you really have no good option, right? Because
Hmm.
if you don't show up to do something like that for your child, like it so well, we'll take your scenario first. If you do show up,
Hmm.
then like obviously you're trying to spend time with your child. Like you don't want your child to be taken somewhere away from you, especially when it's your time
Hmm.
and whatever. Like I think that's fair. If you show up, then it's held against you of like, oh, he was causing a scene, or he this is distressing for the
Hmm.
child or whatever. But then the other side of that is if you don't show up, then the court is like, well, why didn't you even show up? Like it wasn't,
Exactly.
nobody was withholding you from your child because you didn't even try to show up. And I see this a
Yeah.
lot. Like I've heard this a lot from father. The cases that I'm thinking of are all just happen to be fathers, but I'm sure it's happened to mothers too, where
Hmm.
it's like, hey, I was texting the mom. My time was supposed to start Friday at 6, but then mom just kept texting back. She was like, "Oh, if you show up at 6 on Friday, I'm gonna call the cops because she's not gonna go with you this weekend." It's like, well,
Yeah.
it's my weekend. She should be with me. I'm gonna be there at 6. Mom's like, don't show up at 6, and so you end up with this whole back and forth thing. And so finally, the dad or whoever the parent is just like, okay, fine. I guess I won't show up because I don't want to cause a scene. I don't want to be that guy. I
Yeah.
don't want to get the cops involved. I think maybe in this case, it is in the best interest of my child. Like, we'll deal with this in court. You go to court, and then the judge is like, no, you didn't even attempt to get your child.
Yeah.
right? So it doesn't count, right? And so it's
What do
you
you
can't
mean?
you right. So it's like neither, like there really is no good option there. Like there's like
Yeah.
you can't pick either road there. There's no win.
Yeah. And the question is, why isn't, because this has been going on for years. This isn't anything new. Why isn't there a checks and balance now? At what point are we going to get a checks and balance? I don't want to talk bad about a judge, but I think the best analogy I ever heard from a lawyer, and this guy was in his 70s, 40 years practicing. He walked into court, he won the case kind of guy.
Yeah.
And he was like, when you walk into court, he was like, you're asking somebody to, essentially tell you, hey, paint a picture for me, right? You're both going to paint this picture, and whichever one comes out better is how I'm going to decide, right? And when he
Right,
said
right.
that, I was like, you're asking somebody that has no knowledge. They don't want to hear the fluff. They don't want to hear the why I hate you and you hate me. And then you want me to make a decision for your kid. So like I see both sides of the coin with a judge that's like the only person that can make a good decision for your kid is you. But at the same time, like I have a judge right now that preaches that day in and day out, but he makes the worst decisions for children every time he
Hmm.
gets in front of them. And it's like you like that analogy sticks so well when you go into court and you're sitting there, you're trying to paint your picture. How do you paint a clear picture when you have so much emotion, so much, like you are tied to this is
Right,
you that you
right,
are fighting for. So it's
right.
like it's crazy just trying to like understand both sides of that coin. I don't think all judges are bad, I don't, but I think there is no checks and balances.
Well, no, and I actually I agree with you there. I don't think all judges are bad. I know there are a lot of people online on both sides of this. Whatever,
Hmm.
however you feel about shared parenting or parental alienation or whatever. Like there are a lot of people that'll immediately run to the idea of like all judges are corrupt and the whole system is
Hmm.
rigged, and my trial, my case, my custody case, somebody was being paid off, and that's how I know. I'm like, does that happen? Probably
Yes.
yes. Like there are some, I do think there are some corrupt judges out there. There are, I
Hmm.
mean, we've got enough of those stories to know it does happen. But what I really think the problem is a combination of what you just said. Like, yes, there are no checks and balances, nobody overseeing any of this. um Second thing, I think that the system is set up for this kind of failure, right? Like it's
Hmm.
just a bad system, and a lot of people are able to function in it, like legally, like judges and lawyers in this case, right? They're legally able to have this wide discretion and make decisions on these cases just because that's how the terrible system is set up. But then I think the other component of this is that there are just a lot of people that probably don't care, or like they just are not invested enough in your case to want to make a good decision about it. And it's terrible to talk about the legal system that way, judges or lawyers or whatever, but your lawyer is being billed on billable hours for your case. Maybe if you've got a lawyer that you talk to a lot, you're billing them for a few hours a month, but it's probably not a whole lot more than that unless you're actively in trial. And then your judge, maybe they're going to listen to 20 minutes of testimony and make a decision on that, right? They are just are not invested enough. They don't know enough about
Yeah,
your case in order to want to make a good decision about it, right?
absolutely. And then if you look at the dockets too, that doesn't help anything.
Yeah. Oh
You have
yeah, sure.
judges that are like just fluttered with huge dockets, and they're trying to get people in and out. And it's I think I've had two what were supposed to be full day trials, right?
Hmm.
So imagine losing an entire day as a judge to like one person,
Yep.
and then you've got a million other people that are trying to get in there as well.
Yep.
So they've got crazy dockets. So they're overworked. I don't like saying this, but judges are underpaid absolutely every day of the week. They don't make money like they made when they were a lawyer. When you take a judgeship, you're taking probably somewhere close to 100 grand pay cut, if not more.
Sure.
So like you start tacking that on to how much time you're spending in the courthouse, and then how much stuff you have to hear, and then like I'm going to be honest, I think family laws can sometimes be the hardest things to hear. When you start hearing about like just the nitty gritty of how bad people can get, right? And Casey Anthony's a prime example of that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And so it's funny. So just a little bit of my personal background. So I spent a little bit of time in law enforcement,
Okay.
doing digital forensics. So I was a
Okay.
digital forensic investigator,
Mm,
and so we did everything from cyber crimes, like ransomware, malware, like big like stuff that affected the state or cities or whatever, all the way to like major crimes that involved some sort of digital component, homicide, rape, theft, whatever, where like a cell phone was involved or a computer or anything like that, right? So, but the what's funny is that I obviously like, so being in that work, I've got a lot of colleagues, or I had coworkers or whatever, that when they left, you've got to figure out what to do. Do I go to another agency? Do I go work for a law firm? Do I whatever? And so many of them said, after they kind of jumped ship and went to go find another another job, so many of them have said, I do not, they gave it like 2 weeks, and then they were like, I do not want to work in family law, right? Like they did
yep.
like 2 weeks of family law cases or whatever. And they were like, nope, that's it. I'm done. I remember talking to one of them, and I was like, oh, but man, you told me, he was doing some family law cases with an attorney for like a month or two. I was like, man, no, you told me you were going to be killing it, like money wise, like financially, like like you were able to charge, like way over what the going market rate was, and people would still be paying you. Like I thought you were going to be loving that. He was like,
Oh,
no, the reason it is like that is he was like, I tried to price myself out of some of these cases. He was like, yeah, he'd like get a case that he didn't want to take, and he would give like some absurd amount. He's like, oh no, this is going to be a big case. It's going to be whatever thousands of dollars, right? Like that's going to be
yeah.
and then you get this angry ex that's going to be the one footing the bill, and angry ex is over there. She's like, done, I'll pay it, I'll write you the
Yeah.
check today. Just and it, because it involves all this, like this, all of this nasty, like I want to see all the text messages that were on his phone. I want to see what her browsing history looks like. How much money did she spend on this? Like
Yeah.
how much, like all of the petty like back and forth. And again, at the end of the day, like exactly what we're talking about, what's in the best interest of the children, right? None of that
Yeah.
stuff. Right?
Not at
Like, do you
all.
like does it really matter what her Amazon shopping history looked like? Like,
Yep.
like unless she's buying like drugs or weapons, like probably not. Right? Like,
Yeah, and you're not gonna find that out.
right, and that's probably not going to be on her Amazon shopping list. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's wild to me the extent people will go. I've seen people that are willing to hire PIs. They'll get a private investigator to go look into things, and like
Yep.
you ever sit there and just think about the fact that sometimes you just don't want to know. Like my ex was
Right.
cheating on me. I didn't want to know this stuff was going on. You
Right.
know?
Like how much, like once you know, or even once you have a suspicion, like at that point, like if you're headed for divorce, the relationship is over, like you're
Yeah,
good. Just call it, be done with it. It's actually, it kind of reminds me of the joke. Well, I guess it's not a joke, but it was a, I don't know, story advice or something. I forget where I heard it, but somebody was talking about, like, the in a relationship, like the minute you feel like you need to go through your ex's cell phone, like your
ah,
relationship is pretty much done, right? Because
yeah,
either there's only one of two options, right? Like either you're going to find the thing that you didn't want to find there, and now you're going to be mad, and now you're going to, or like, let's say that your significant other turns that you push and you push, and I want to see it, and I want to, like, hey, there's nothing on there, but okay, here's the phone. You go through it, and
yeah.
there really is nothing on there. Well, now you've just like you
Trust is
you
gone.
killed the relationship, and you blew up that trust, right? So it's like there's really no option. So yeah, I mean, at some point it's like, you know enough, you know what you need to know.
Yep.
How much more do you really want, right? Like it's over, move on.
I did the phone thing in my relationship. It was Mother's Day. That was a terrible one. So like I look back and I'm just like,
Yeah,
man,
good timing, right?
yeah. She woke up. I went through when she was sleeping. She woke up and I'm just sitting on the front porch silent. I'm
Yep,
like, man,
yep,
like, I saw way too much,
yep,
And I look
yep,
back,
and
I
then
look back at situations like that, and I'm like, I could have easily just been like, the suspicion was there, and like I should have just ended it at that. Like
sure. Well, and
now,
yeah, and and that's the terrible thing. But if if you really do have enough of that suspicion in your relationship, then you probably should be taking a hard look at whether or not there is a relationship there. And I know, like, we're not this. I know you don't do a relationship podcast, but I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
for the sake of the children, right? Like, handle that separately, deal with whatever drama you need to, and then put it aside so that you can move on and focus on the kids, right?
Yeah, and that's the core point of this, right? Because when you think about it, any of those situations is just negating the best interest of the child. You're doing it to win. You go back to the
Yeah,
core of all this. You're just doing it to win in court. And I
yeah,
do,
yeah,
like you said earlier about the how lawyers handle things. You come into their office and they tell you, well, you can win. This is what you'll win.
yep,
That is, I think, the foundation of where everything goes bad. I obviously a lot of friends talk to each other, but like it's when you get in front of an attorney where things really change, because you're angry and an attorney's telling you you've got all of this, and it's live. I think Michael Jordan said it best. The F them kids. That's what happens when you get in front of that attorney. It's like, well, we're siding with Michael Jordan right now.
yep,
Uh,
yep.
but I look at the law side of this and like the legislative reform. I've done a lot of thinking on it. I think the end result that would really fix this would be we stop all of the crazy. We're in court. I've got 40 grand in court. That's how much I've spent. So over 40
Mm.
grand. We stop all of the I need 37 hearings to get one thing done. We turn around and we set a pretrial hearing, right? We could spend 4 hours in a pretrial hearing or 2 hours in a pretrial hearing just discussing, kind of everything. And then we set trial for a year out. And as soon as you do that, trial is an all-day hearing. So you got 10 hours of hearing. In 10 hours, you both plead your cases, right? You have a year to come to an amicable agreement. If you refuse to do so, in a year, we are going to trial and this is ended. You both plead your cases. If you want to get down and dirty and you want to dig and pay PIs and pay, all these investigators to do all this forensic investigation and whatnot. But in a year, we're going to come in here. You're going to lay all your evidence out and I'm going to make a decision for you. In that moment, you've now got 12, 14 hours. Most attorneys, you're probably spending $5,000 max to cover that 14 hours. Just in court time plus whatever prep work you have.
Prep work and compiling documents and all that's going to be a huge part of it. But yeah, sure, something like that. Yeah.
You're probably under 10 grand at the end of it all.
So
Done deal. You get it taken care of. So if you want to be nitty gritty, cool, it's done. But the most important thing, the judge isn't making the decision. I think there needs to be a jury.
No, so the jury component actually is really interesting. I've been talking to a lot of folks about that recently too, because the question, the question that we have to ask is like why do judges hold so much power? Like why do they have so
Mm-hmm.
much discretion over stuff
Yeah.
like this? And then but it's funny because like I have not really heard a very clear answer to that, like a very good
Mm-hmm.
answer to that, because what people usually point to or the only line that I've really heard is like, oh, like these are really important cases, really important cases because they involve a child and they're going to affect the rest of this child's life, and so that's why we just have to leave it to a judge. And you're like, well, no, hold on, we have juries that quite literally decide like whether somebody is guilty of a murder or whether somebody lives or
Yep.
dies, or whether like they're like we have juries that decide much more important issues
Mm-hmm.
rather than like where this kid is going to live for the next 10 years or 12 years or
Mm-hmm.
however long it is, right? Like we have juries that decide much more important issues than this. Like if you're telling me that we can't trust the jury to decide something like this, like is something wrong with our jury system or with our legal system? Like what's the outcome here? And I don't know, do you know like what is do you know like what is the argument there for why we don't have juries involved in because in Georgia you can have a jury involved in your in your divorce case, but they are not going to do anything having to do with custody. They can only decide the assets, basically. So if
Okay.
you can go to jury trial based on things like the value of the house or division of assets, or do you split the 401k, all that kind of stuff. But the jury will not and cannot decide any custody issues. So I don't know exactly why that is. I don't know if you do.
I went down that rabbit hole.
Okay.
So from what I found, the deciding factor on it is the cost. But that's weird because if you look at Texas's law, Texas you can request a jury. Texas you're able to have a jury handle your custody.
For
And
custody
that's
also, for the
yeah,
like schedule and parenting time and everything. Interesting.
yep, yep. Now I don't know if that law has changed. I read that in 2021, but
Okay, interesting.
yeah, and the main issue for all the states was the cost of it. But if you think about it,
Hmm.
if you take the route that I proposed, is the cost really there because they'd have a 1 day trial?
Right, right.
So
Yeah,
like
settle it all in
how
one
much
day,
more
sort
time?
it out. Yeah.
Yeah, how much more time would you spend in court if you took away from all of these different unnecessary hearings to just I have two trial days. I have a pre-trial and a trial day. You would have so much more time, especially with the overloaded dockets. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, so I would I like the idea of that. I would have to throw on a couple caveats. Is that what like one I think we would have to start with which like this is my whole thing obviously on TikTok and social media and everything. I think you would have to start with a presumption of 50-50,
Yes.
equal shared parenting, unless somebody met the appropriate burden of proof. I don't either preponderance of evidence or clear and convincing evidence in civil cases is a little bit higher. Still
I
not
think
quite as high as beyond a reasonable doubt, but
everything should be beyond a reasonable doubt, in my opinion.
sure. So we could put that at beyond a reasonable doubt. I'd be fine with that. But I think you would have to start with 50-50, because otherwise,
Mhm.
like in Georgia right now, again, the way that the judges rule and the way the law is written, the way that the judicial, even the Superior Court judge rule book, what do they call it, rule book or guidebook or whatever it is,
The
the way
cannons,
that all the yeah, essentially Georgia has a different, I think it's like rules for Superior Court judges or something like that. But
all of them follow the federal rule of judicial cannons. So
yeah, so but in there, so in Georgia's specifically, like they actually have, it's like rule 24, 24.10, I think. They have a sample parenting plan, and
we
that
talked about that
sample
recently.
parenting plan, yeah, I had a video about this recently where basically like you check the box as primary custody going to mom or dad, and then most of the time that usually goes to whoever did not work during the
Hmm.
marriage, right? All that to say, whoever was the stay-at-home dad or stay-at-home mom or whatever. So
Hmm.
all that to say, like, this process, like having the year of try to sort it out, and if not, then we'll go to trial. I think that you have to go into trial with with the child, with everything that we know about what actually is best for the children, like with that being the standard. Because otherwise, if I'm the stay-at-home mom, and I know that it's probably going to go in my favor anyways when I get to trial, then sure, right? Like I'll just write it out. Like, let's go to court. Like, we'll have a full jury trial, because I already know at the end of the day, like, I'm already the winner, right?
Hmm. Yeah,
In this case. So
yeah.
I think, so all that to say, I think we have to start with the shared custody, the 50-50 presumption. And then I think the other thing I would add to your flow, to your model, is like so I've been thinking a lot about this recently. I actually talked to a couple lawyers in Georgia about this. If we had the time and the resources to do something like this, I think it would be really helpful to have like an initial, even before that first like pre-trial, that even before that initial hearing, like if there could be some sort of mental health evaluation, or like I don't know, like a specifically trained social worker or something, not necessarily to make a decision, but basically just to like put the family in sort of a big category, right? Like this, like she can probably sit down 10 minutes with mom, 10 minutes with dad, talk to the kid for 5 minutes. Maybe you can do the whole thing start to finish in an hour, but that social worker could probably come away, if again, if they're well trained, if they're familiar, they could probably come away from this saying like, yeah, that both parents seem fine. Obviously there's some mistrust, they're getting divorced because of finances or in-laws or whatever, but there's really no reason for them to be high conflict, so let's put them
Hmm.
in this bucket. They sort of get this path this little bit
Streamline it.
quicker,
Yeah.
streamline it a little bit, and then if that social worker goes into the meeting and mom just starts screaming about like there's been abuse and he hit me and I think he's a danger to the child, and then you go into the meeting with dad and dad is like, well, she's been cheating on me for 6 years with 5 different guys, and it's like, okay, let's put them in a different category, right?
Yeah.
Like we'll put them in this
We got
bucket over here,
problems.
and then they can go, this one probably is going to require maybe the jury trial or a much longer process or whatever. But again,
Yeah.
like as it is, everybody right now in the court system just kind of goes through that same process,
The ringer.
which really, yeah, exactly. And there's no reason for that at all, especially
Yeah.
when we're considering what's actually best for kids.
Absolutely. So my caveat to that is when you step in front of um, a psychologist or whatever it is, some sort of mediating individual, right? I'm a firm believer in like the human factor, right?
Sure.
And the human factor is that we all act on what's in our best interest at the end of the day, right? Which is
Mm.
a lot of the reason why we're where we're at. So what kind of coercive tactics can be employed in that situation? CPS fails daily.
Yeah. Yeah.
I follow a lawyer that he's up in New York, but he's very strict on like you never talk to CPS. So you always have your lawyer talk to CPS. They're not allowed in your house. They're not allowed. And then like if I look at my own case, like guardian ad litem's, I have yet to have a guardian ad litem that was competent. And like
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
there's no nice way to say it, but like
Mm.
um just it's a simple concept of what your job is and what you do are two different things.
Sure.
When you turn around and you think about adding in a psychologist into it to evaluate the family, it's like it's good in theory, but what did they get out of it? And then what kind of coercive tactics can happen because of
Right. Right. No, that's fair, and that's why I said like I don't necessarily think that the psychologist or the therapist or whatever, I don't necessarily think that they should have any decision making authority except
it? Hmm.
for the evaluation of
Recommendation.
like, yeah, the recommendation of, is this somebody, because maybe here's the other component of that. Like if the evaluator says that like, hey, this family should probably be pretty low conflict, it looks like they can work it out, maybe they don't even need this pre-trial hearing, right? Like
Hmm.
let's just set them up with a counselor or a legal mediator or whatever, and then see if they can resolve their differences in mediation. So again,
Yeah.
the therapist or the evaluator maybe isn't making a determination, they're just recommending, go see this type of person. Whereas, for a more high conflict situation, they're like, we need to get these people a hearing within 30 days because one of them is going to bring out a weapon if we don't, or so,
Have
or
you
something.
have you ever been through mediation? Just curious.
Yes.
All right.
Yep.
How did yours go? Was it amicable? Was it back and forth, or did it end abruptly?
So we had two different, oh man, that was, so we actually have not done mediation for this court cycle
Okay.
yet. So the last actual mediation would have been like 5 or 6 years ago, whatever. So I'm just trying to think back. We had two full days of mediation, and when I say full days, these were like 12, 14 hour days of
Hmm.
mediation. I mean, it was like
Oh,
started
geez.
we started at 8, and maybe not quite, maybe talking like 10 or 12 hour days, but
That's
we
still a long
started, I
time.
think it was terrible. I think we started at 8, and we didn't get done until maybe like 5 or 6, like well after hours.
Hmm.
um and the sorry, you were asking what was your actual question? You were asking like were they
What
how did
like
they go well or were they productive?
yeah, was it productive or was it a waste of time?
So again, I know I sound like a broken record because this this is what I keep coming back to, but I think it would have been productive if
Hmm.
the Georgia laws favored at all some sort of shared
Hmm.
parenting or having involvement of both parents in the child, because as it was, we all went into mediation knowing that I mean we were all told by every lawyer, her lawyer, my lawyer, the mediating lawyer, everybody handed us the piece of paper. They were like, if you don't agree in this room, then you guys are going to go to the judge, and this judge in particular is going to look at the fact that you, dad, like you have a job, mom did not have a job, so all the mom boxes are going to get checked on here, and mom's going to get 80% time decision making, child custody, whatever, right? So like
Hmm.
you're already starting, me in that case, like I'm already starting out knowing that I'm the loser
Lesser. Yeah.
more or less, right? So like you're starting the mediation process knowing that you're the loser. Like how much negotiating power do you think you really have there, right? So like if the question of, I don't know, if the question of Father's Day comes up, right? Like should the kid be allowed to see dad on Father's Day? Well, in mediation, how that would go is like I would, I'd say like, yeah, I really like the idea of the kid being able to see me on Father's Day and see mom on Mother's Day. Like that sounds like a
Yeah.
good idea. But at the end of the day, we both have that paper right in front of us, and we know that if the paper says Father's Day and Mother's Day don't matter, then she has the power to say no, Father's Day and Mother's Day don't matter
Yeah.
because this is what, so it's just like it's really
It's
it would be like,
arbitrary.
yeah, it's like the mediation didn't even really matter because we already had the end result was preset, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So it takes away from the foundation of mediation.
Right,
Uh,
exactly.
so my experience in mediation is we walked in, she said she said no, and that was that. So like
Oh,
that's not
so
productive at all.
so much quicker than than my mediation.
I see, and I sat in there for an hour while the lawyer was like making arguments to be like this shouldn't happen, and then it was still a no. So it was like, all right, cool, waste of time. But when I think about
Gotcha.
mediation, I'm like, it's the same concept as you fall into this trap, or especially in this for shared parenting, where like if there's no presumption, then it's moot at that point. But like the reality is even if there is a presumption, mediation doesn't matter because like if you two don't agree,
Sure.
you're going to be in the same spot anyway. So like
Right.
it's a weird situation. I think
Were
courts
you
also
going to,
use. Go ahead.
just out of curiosity, were you going to mediation for like, was it mostly
Mine was divorce.
financial, or was it like I guess what were you trying to solve? Finances, assets, child
We
custody, or was it
Yeah,
everything?
we were trying to do assets and divorce. And the divorce was getting dragged out. I went to like a bunch of like DS hearings in court, and so the judge had ordered mediation before trial. We walked into mediation, was in there 5 minutes, and she said no, and then spent an hour of like just listening to the argument of like, I understand she said no, but like we're supposed to mediate.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
but
And
like
did she have an attorney representing her?
yeah, yeah, he was a
Okay.
scumbag.
Okay. Okay. Nice. Yeah.
But no, the but like just the premise of the mediation, like it really showed that like this is for the most part without again checks and balances, it's a waste of time. But like mediators don't have power. Like they
Yeah.
can put in they can put in a report to the judge, but they don't have any power. So it's like I'm really getting on the end of like duplicative processes, right? So they ask you to repeat actions over and over and over again. Mediation is one of those actions. Guardian ad litems is another action. Uh, Parenting classes or parenting therapy, right? If you
Hmm.
do like couples therapy or like co-parenting therapy or whatnot, on the premise they're great, but like there's no checks and balances, so it's duplicative practices. I don't know if you've seen how a lot of parents have had like the courts are picking these components, right? So these components have like some sort of tie with the court, and parents are complaining frequently about how they're going to these components, whatever this duplicative process is, and like there's no resolve because it's going off of what the court is already designed to do based off of our analysis, which is like in Georgia, it's where we already have a presumption.
Right.
So it's like it's adding that human factor in the coercive tactics to create those situations. But with like uh, parenting classes, have you done one?
Yeah, so the circuit that I was in required a 4-hour parenting class
Mhm.
that addressed I forget, it's like 3 or 4 things that it addresses. One
Yeah,
of them is like stages of child development, and then amicable, something about trying to be civil or amicable or
yeah,
whatever, right? But that was it. I mean, it was I'm not sure. I don't think I could tell you anything specific from it, but I thought that most of it was fine. But at the end of the day, like, it clearly did not impact our case that
not at
much.
all.
Um,
I did
so
I did mine in Virginia, and it was over Zoom, and it was a facilitated class. And in theory, it was great. I had a great facilitator. She was
yeah,
fantastic. But facilitated trainings are exactly what they are. It's what the class puts in. So I had
sure.
a bunch of people that were checking the box, and I'm sure yours was similar.
Yeah, yep. No, that's exactly it. And I keep thinking, I mean, and this is really why, like, I really, maybe maybe this is a curse on me or whatever, but I really do try to give people the benefit of the doubt of like, oh man, maybe if you had like a really good mediator, a really good
Mhm.
counselor or facilitator, like, with both, both the separating parties in there, like, maybe that would make a difference. And I do hold on to a little bit of that hope,
Yeah.
where I'm like maybe this could be possible. But then, like, usually something that I see online or on social media or whatever, something slaps me back into reality, because I see something online about I don't know, I'm not trying to call anybody out, but there's some people that call themselves like high conflict coaches or high conflict
Hmm.
divorce coaches or whatever.
Yep.
I saw a video of some lady the other day, and she was like, her label at the bottom said like certified high conflict divorce coach or whatever. But her whole thing was like, your child's dad doesn't actually want to see your child. He just
Hmm.
wants to use your child to continue abusing you. That's
Yeah.
why you should, like, and just like on and on. And I'm like, what? I'm watching that video dumbfounded, because I'm like, like, somebody is paying this person to help them navigate the process of divorce. And this person, if what she posts online is actually what she thinks, she's telling people your child's dad doesn't actually want to see your child. They're just using that child to abuse you. Like, how,
Yeah.
how wild is that?
Have you seen that Arizona lawyer, Modern Divorce Group?
Um, oh, I've seen. So I follow a couple lawyers from Arizona. I don't know. I'd have to. Let me see if I can pull up a picture real quick. I think I know the one you're talking about, but what? Why
She I've
is
been
that
watching
one that
her.
you're?
I've been watching her stuff a lot, and like when I look at neutrality of like, and I judge a lot of lawyers on like their neutrality in like all of this, especially in family law, because there's so much of just like a presumption.
Yeah.
And she'll talk on both sides repeatedly, and then I'll see 30 lawyers from somewhere else that like redefine that you need to win aspect, and I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah. What
one out of
would you say that the name was?
I think it's called Modern Divorce Group or Modern Divorce Lawyer or something like that.
Okay.
Uh, and uh, she's probably one of the few that I can find that like legitimately is just looking after like letting
Oh, I
people
think I have.
know,
I see her. I think I have seen her
l-
before. Yeah.
yeah, letting people know like understand that these are what the laws are and whatnot, but like I'm not gonna pick sides. And if you walk into my
Yeah.
office, I'm not picking sides. I'm being very like neutral about it. And I think a lot of lawyers kind of need to shift to that mindset anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I can tell you, so my plan is I'm pursuing my Juris Doctorate when I finish my military career.
Okay.
And my plan is to be able to tell clients like, hey, I understand that like this is what you want and you're mad and everything else, but this is where I'm going to take a step back. If you intend on like winning, I don't intend on representing you, you
Hmm.
know, and I want to be very blunt about that.
Yeah.
Like, because at the end of the day, I was brought up on the idea that like you you're building the next generation like in the military. I, you know, every guy that's under me, every guy that's, you know, appointed to me is I'm setting them up to replace me, and they are the military. So like
Yeah, for sure.
your kids are the same way. I want my kids to be a better version of me and a better version of their
Yeah,
mom.
absolutely.
I can't do that if their entire childhood is full of conflict and war.
Yeah. Well, and so speaking, so the lawyer thing is an interesting one to me too, because yeah, I hear a lot of lawyers say, and actually, well, so I'll start with this. Like, it actually is funny because over the last several years, like especially since more states have started passing shared parenting laws, you know, Kentucky and then Florida recently, because there for whatever reason there's a bunch of Florida TikTok lawyers. I don't know why, but they're it seems like they're all over the place down there. But it's funny because like there's been a little bit of a shift in a lot of these lawyers, because you look back through some of their old videos, or if you've been in this space for a while, like you remember lawyers used to say like, no, shared parenting is never going to work, we can't start with 50-50 because of all this stuff, like, you know, blah blah, parents are going to leave, kids are going to get abused, like whatever I don't know, whatever the outcome is. But then you actually enact one of these shared parenting laws, these 50-50 laws, and these lawyers are like, oh, well, actually, what this does now is it has greatly decreased my stress and my workload for these petty cases that I didn't really want to take anyways. And actually, what it has done is it has freed up my time and the judge's time and court resources to handle the cases that actually do matter, right? So now, instead of two good parents, or otherwise good parents, you know, under any other metric, we would have two good parents equally involved in this kid's life. So now, instead of having those two parents fighting each other over which one is going to be the primary parent or which one the kid is going to spend 80% of their time with, we went to 50-50. Those parents kind of chilled out a little bit. And now I actually have time to dig into these cases of abuse or actual domestic violence or cases where kids really are in danger. Like, these lawyers are talking like, I didn't actually have time to do that before because I was dealing with so many of these petty cases where 50-50 probably would have been the best thing anyways.
That was weird. It like switched microphones and it wouldn't let me switch while we were recording. That made
I think the end result of this, what we have seen in states that have actually enacted shared parenting laws, is that you know, you have a lot of lawyers really kind of freaking out on the front end. I don't know if they're concerned about billable hours or or whatever the issue is. But then after these 50-50 laws get enacted, we see lawyers actually pretty much do a complete 180, where they're like,
mm-hmm.
oh, actually, this, you know, this freed up my time. I don't have to deal with these really petty arguments from
Mm-hmm.
two good parents. Like, they just, you know, let's call it 50-50 and move on. And it actually gives them more time to deal with the actual cases where a kid is being harmed or there's some sort of
Mm-hmm.
abuse, or cases that are going to involve some sort of more extensive litigation.
Yeah, it was weird when the switch happened in Florida. They did not. I saw a lot of attorneys on TikTok talking about it that were talking about how even though the presumption now is 50-50, that there's no like guidance on 50-50, so it could continue with like you know, the consistent like battling back and forth, which kind of undermines the whole statute.
Yeah.
But you know, if you just take a step back to the shared parenting side of that, the equal parenting, um, you know, what is the real recourse that enables the reason to not have 50-50, right? Because if even if you went to the jury selection, right, and we had juries deciding, I can almost guarantee that you ask majority of Americans their opinion on like how parenting should happen, I don't think they're going to turn around and go, well, I think there should be one presumed parent.
Yeah.
I
Have you
think most
seen
of
the
them.
studies on that actually?
I've
They,
only really saw what you've put out about
yeah.
it, because I've been learning the legal side of things more than the side that supports that.
Yeah, so let me read one to you. I happen to have it close by. Let me read one to you actually. They've done studies like this all over the country, but this was one in Georgia.
Okay.
And you can find these on sharedparenting.org.
Okay.
It wasn't just them doing it. It was ResearchScape International is who actually did the polling. But yeah, in Georgia, 92% of adults, and this was just a random cross section of adults, not necessarily mothers or fathers or even people involved in the court process, just a random adult voters in Georgia. So 92% believed that it's in the best interest of the child to have as much time as possible with each parent. And then 87% of people in Georgia said that they would support a change in Georgia law that awards children as much time as possible with each parent after a divorce or separation. Right. So
Hmm.
basically, like supporting a shared parenting law, 87% of people in Georgia, and then 92% support the concept, but I guess just don't necessarily think we need a law change. So yeah, like the overwhelming majority, and that's the same. I mean, in Georgia is one of those places that doesn't even have the law right now.
Hmm.
There are a lot of states where these numbers are actually even higher. Pushes up to like 95% or whatever. So yeah, the overwhelming majority of adults actually support equal shared parenting, a law or a presumption or a policy or whatever you want to call it. But just for whatever reason, most states do not have that in place.
Doesn't that make you wonder? Like, we have so many that support it, but yet judges don't.
Yeah, right. No, yeah, it's the wildest thing. Like the judges and the lawyers. I mean, we've got research from pediatricians, from counselors, from child psychologists, social workers. Like we've got hundreds of studies over the
Hmm.
last. If you've seen any of my videos, I use I use this line a lot because it's true. We've got probably like over 200 studies over the last like 40 or 50 years, all basically saying the same thing, that kids
Yeah.
thrive and do better when they have both parents actively involved in their lives. So we've got people from every profession, every demographic saying the same thing, and then
Yep.
you have really the biggest opponents to this are family law attorneys, and then judges who seem to not want their discretion taken away. Right?
And
Um,
it is weird because when I've done my research on the legal end of things, and like a lot of people make that argument at Title 4D, and they use that as like the basis for why it's not like sought after. But have you looked at like how Title 4D funding goes? It's not like,
so big
hey, I get to
picture a
put this.
little bit, but
It They don't get to put it in a cookie jar and like,
right,
here I go. So it's
right.
like, it's hard to understand how Title 4D is like the driving factor, but it is a good argument point. It is a good, well, hey, you guys do have this, so if this is not your driving factor, what is it, you
Yeah,
know?
I think it's a big Title 4D's gotten a lot of attention. I think it is a big component because I also think that the child support, I mean, all it's just like dominoes, right? Like Title 4D affects the child support system, and then the child support system is also tied into custody because like there are a lot of people that advocate and I can see the argument for this, but there are a lot of people that advocate that the default should be 50-50 no child support, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think like I don't know. I'm not completely sold on that because I think like having a small reasonable amount of child support for a little bit of time, especially if the other parent never worked, maybe enough time for them to get some skills or get a job. Like what? Like I could go either way on that, but.
Yeah.
Um, but a lot of people advocate for right off the bat, when the divorce is filed, 50-50 no child support, and then that's the standard. So anyways, like all these things, yeah, Title 4D bleeds into child support, bleeds into the fact that we can't really have a true 50-50 presumption because somebody has to end up with the child support. So I see that in there, but I think a bigger argument or maybe a better explanation for what's actually going on with judges is probably that they, I think a lot of them probably see it as some of their power being taken away if you move to something like this, or maybe their own judicial discretion, or just, I can tell you, like in rural South Georgia, a lot of them just have this whole, like, this is the way it's done. Dad goes to work, mom stays home and takes care of the kids, and by golly, that's how it's going to be.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
because,
The
like,
old
that's that's typical South Georgia for you. That's rural
yeah,
Georgia.
the
And
Southern
so,
mentality.
yeah, and like, what's the old, there's the the very sexist joke of like women should be uh pregnant barefoot and in the kitchen or something, like, what, however
Yeah.
that goes. And raising kids and cooking and cleaning. And I legitimately think that there are a lot of judges in rural parts of the country that think that. And so you like, you get a dad walking walking into the courtroom saying, like, hey boss, let me have my kids half the time. And the judge gives him, like, this real weird side eye of, like, are you sure, sir? Like, are you really sure? And so, like, it's just, I think some of it's cultural. I think some of it
Hmm.
is judicial discretion. They feel like they're taking their power away. I do think that some of it is the state bar associations and the family
Yeah.
law attorneys, where they're like, is this going to decrease our billable hours in all of
Yeah.
these cases? So I think there's a lot of good explanations for it. But yeah, I don't necessarily come down to it's all just corrupt judges or it's all just Title
Yeah.
4D. Like, I don't necessarily buy either of those things as a full excuse.
Just curious before we wrap this up, have you
Yeah.
ever gone through the complaint process with the state bars or the judges?
Uh, no, not really. To be honest, just my reason for that is it just doesn't seem worth it.
Hmm.
But I don't know. Yeah, right now, like, most of my fight is like, obviously I've got my individual court case, and then most of the rest of my fight is like advocacy for changing the laws on the state level and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
Like, honestly, I don't, because this is the other thing. Like, I talk to some people, and everybody's got their fight. Everybody's doing what they think is the right thing. So I'm not knocking anybody, but you've got some people that are like, yeah, I'm gonna file like federal lawsuits or RICO cases or whatever. Like, we're taking down all the corrupt judges, and like, that's
Yeah.
like, if that's your thing, like, you do you, man. But like, that's not my fight right now, right? Like,
Mhm.
I'm not here to, like, burn the names of all the corrupt judges. Like, I just think kids, as a standard, as a default presumption, kids should have an equal shot at having relationships with both of their parents, right? Like, can we just
Absolutely.
start there? Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And the legislative change of shared parenting is the way to go on that. I have dived down the complaint department of that.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and it's such a weird situation because, like, in theory it's supposed to work well, but again, when the laws are so, like, skewed the way they are, it's a hard avenue to go down.
yeah,
And then it ties back into, maybe somebody isn't corrupt, maybe it could be the southern idea of it, of, like, women should be in the kitchen and raising the children and dads are out, or
mm-hmm,
whatever, or vice versa, right?
yeah, yeah,
Because you can have just as much as you could have a one side, and you could have the other side. You can find a judge that's like super father's rights,
yeah,
and
yeah,
that's
sure,
not that. We talked about that at the beginning, where it's just flipping the roles. It's the
yeah,
same argument on the opposite side. um but when I dove down it, I've noticed that the legislative side is the reason why there isn't going to be a change.
yeah.
Because you can complain about a judge, but those discretions are so open, it doesn't matter.
Well, and the funny thing about that is it's kind of, yeah, like, they have so much discretion. And I mean, like, this opens up a lot of avenues, and maybe we should set up a time to do another one of these, and we can just
Mm.
talk about this for an hour. But like, when you talk about judicial discretion, like, once you factor in the idea that, like, a lot of these judges really just give oral rulings or verbal guidance in a lot of these cases. Like they're not actually writing orders. And so like the other side effect of that, or the impact of that, is that like if you wanted to appeal this or take it to a higher court, like you really have no basis for doing that, because there was never a formal like written order. There was no record for this. It's just verbal guidance of like I heard a story the other day of a judge telling two parents, like the parents were trying to agree on a 50-50 plan, and the judge was like, oh, I don't do 50-50 plans, go out and draft something else and come back in. And so it's like that judge, the judge didn't issue an order. Like that's not going to be an actual ruling. He just said like, no, I don't do 50-50 plans. You know, come back later. What how do you appeal there's no way to appeal something like that, right? So it's
it's a motion for written findings of fact and conclusory findings.
Yeah, well, but even for that, no, that's absolutely it. Even for that, in so in Georgia, you have to request it, right? Like you have to file the motion, and then you can only do that for the final order. Like you can't do that for temporary hearings too. Okay. So like you end up with another issue there. Like sometimes if you've got a court case that drags on for years, you might spend 3 or 4 years under a temporary order, which there is no way to appeal, because
you just sit there and run with it.
Right, and the judge doesn't give any findings of fact because those aren't required for temporary orders. So
there is a recourse for that. Anytime there's a written order, you can always file one of these. It's a motion for reconsideration, and then you add a memorandum of law to it. If you do those, you're putting it on record that this is what the judge ruled, this is your motion to reconsider, and this is the law behind it. But if you do that, and that's just something to think about, something for the people more than anything else. But yeah, we should absolutely, I know you got to go. We should absolutely set a time in the future where we could talk some more. I do want to chat offline in the future regarding some of the changes I kind of want to see. I really want to take this podcast to the next level, because there's a lot of people that also get railroaded by the system. You know, maybe they're in an abusive situation or whatever, and eventually, you know, this gains enough traction that it becomes a monetary asset, and that can help with turnaround and helping people as they need it, as they see fit.
Yeah, for sure.
But more so than anything else, us putting the information out there with your help, you're out here giving all of the evaluations that are being had to, you know, to really show the courts like, hey, shared parenting is the way to go. Shared parenting is in the child's best interest. And those things don't typically get talked about in court. I've never seen it discussed in any of the court hearings I've been in.
Yeah, no, I no, 100%. I agree. I'm not sure that I know like 1 or 2 guys that have tried to bring it up, and what they've told me is their judge pretty much just brushed it off, and he was like, I don't care. I'm only concerned about, you know, this kid in this particular situation. And it's like, okay, well that seems like a cop out, right? Like yeah, exactly.
So, but I do know you have to go. I appreciate you coming on today. We'll schedule a time sometime in the near future. I'm deploying very soon, so I'll be doing it from the desert, but we'll make it happen.
Okay, yeah, no, yeah, let's talk logistics, see if we can still make that work. But absolutely, no, it was good talking to you.
Thank you, Justin. And then everybody, I ask that you go to the Shared Parenting. The link has been on for the entire podcast. Just click on Shared Parenting. That's Justin's TikTok account for Georgia Shared Parenting. As well as you can find mine for YouTube, the Equal Parent Project, as well as on TikTok, the Equal Parent Project. And I appreciate you coming. We appreciate it here. Hopefully we can get this movement really started, and we can start, you know, finding the legislative action that we're trying to get done for 50-50 parenting across all 50 states.
Absolutely.
Or even a federal law for it.
Oh yeah, for sure. No, that'd be great. So we'll see what happens with that. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Justin, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. You too, man. Have a good one.
You as well. All right, later.